Hello there. I'm Paul Haswell, Head of Technology at Pinsent Masons in Hong Kong, and it's time for another podcast. I hope you're all doing very well out there. I know the world seems to be going crazy at the moment, and I have to confess, I am flying solo today. It is just me. Now, there are lots of reasons for that. Thomas is away, he's on holiday, but he's going to be quarantined when he comes back into Hong Kong. Some of my team are quarantined as well because they've been traveling, and I am quarantined as well. I come to you today not from Pinsent Mason's offices in Hong Kong, but from my apartment, which I have to admit, being a technology lawyer, I'm in a room, I try and picture it, surrounded by gadgets is the best way to describe it. There's two computer screens in front of me, two keyboards, a laptop to the left of me, audio gear to the right, and I'm stuck in the middle. With you, I suppose, if you get the reference. Anyway, today I'd like to talk to you about AI. Now, AI is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for a long time. It's one of those things that people are very excited about, they're enthused about, but also I think they're a little bit scared. Now, why is that? I remember last week I was talking about Skynet and the Terminator and how actually before that I was talking about how fridges could take over the world. There is a certain fear that perhaps AI will create some sort of supercomputer and we'll all be in trouble, we'll all become slaves to technology if we're not already. I mean, how many times do you check your phones? But what is AI? And there's so much discussion as to what the topic means. So I thought I'd try something a bit clever. Given that I am at home, I'm going to ask an actual AI what AI is. So let's give this a go. Computer, what is AI?
AI generally stands for artificial intelligence. As a branch of computer science research, AI is defined as the study of devices that perceive their environments and take actions that maximize their chance of success at some goal. More commonly, the term AI is used to describe when machines are seen as mimicking human cognitive functions such as learning and problem solving.
Thank you very much, computer. That was actually an Amazon Echo. I changed from Alexa to computer because I'm a bit of a Star Trek fan, so I can feel like I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise. But that is a good example of what an AI is. Amazon Echo and Alexa, and indeed Siri, and all of these virtual assistants are a form of AI. It's a technology program essentially using algorithms to almost replicate in some ways a human response, but ultimately what it's trying to do is it's learning, it's remembering things from past searches, remembering past inquiries, and learning and developing new solutions. Now it's quite exciting. You'll look at how AI has been taught to win games of Go, win games of StarCraft. AI is often intended used. If anyone's ever flown a drone, they use complex AI to try and monitor situations all the time and adapt them so the drone doesn't automatically crash. And it's amazing how well these things can fly themselves. But there's very much of an arms race going on how we can actually deploy AI. It's seen as the future, but it's seen as the future because ultimately what it does is it makes things more efficient. It provides, I think about it, we're always looking for quicker and easier ways to do things, always looking to automation as a way to try and make that happen. Well, AI provides that. In many ways, it's just another way of doing things. It's another way of being more efficient. Now, this has led to what I will describe as an artificial intelligence arms race. Lots of nations, most notably China and the US, and to some extent the UK as well, have said that they are trying to be the world leaders in AI. Now, it's used in different ways. If you look at the facial recognition technology that's being used, deployed widely in China, you can see AI in use there. The US is looking at that, wondering if they can do the same thing. But ultimately, that's at a government level. What I'd like to talk about is what's happening at the consumer level, at the business-to-business level. How is AI being used there? And should we really be afraid? Should we be scared that if AI goes too far, then we'll all lose our jobs? We'll be replaced by robots. We'll all have, I believe the phrase that was used, we'll all be living lives of productive leisure. Of course, no one ever thinks, how do you have productive leisure if you've got absolutely no money to do anything? Productive leisure might be just living under a bridge, which, to be honest, wouldn't be very fun, particularly not if the AI robots come and start moving you on. Now, fears of AI have been around for a long time. I know I always recommend some sort of film, normally a bad film on this podcast. I'd like to recommend to you a good film from the 1970s, which is called Colossus, the Forbin Project. This was a science fiction film. I can't remember who directed it, but it was based on a novel of the same type, which is called Colossus by Dennis Feltham Jones, F.D. Jones. Now, this was about the US perfecting an AI which would create an advanced nuclear defense system with the goal of trying to prevent war taking place. What happens is AI, remember, it's a problem, it's all about problem solving, about the most efficient way to do something. The AI ends up taking control of the world, making sure that humanity is enslaved, and because humanity can't do anything without the AI approving it, it means that war will not happen. War will completely be prevented, and it says, right, the human race is now going to rise into the new millennium. And whilst that may sound a bit like a dose of paranoia or Twilight Zone episode, in a way, that's what AI is most meant to be doing. So, how is it being used in practice? Look at the banking sector in particular. If you have a look at our report on AI in the financial services industry, which again, I put a link to it last week, I'll put a link to it in the podcast this week as well. You can see how different jurisdictions are approaching AI, how they're looking at ways to essentially make customer experience, that's probably the main thing, making customer experience more effective and thereby win more customers. Also making their interactions with other parts of the banks, making their interactions with regulators even more effective. And it's something we should be looking forward to. Now, I think that I've obviously been around technology for a long time, but I've seen that it can be incredibly clunky. If you remember, actually a good example, if you remember dictation software, if you had the misfortune of dealing with it in either the late 90s or the early 2000s, I was involved in a pilot trying to use dictation software in a law firm, and you basically dictated complete gibberish into your computer, and you'd have a letter that you'd have to rewrite. But think how that's come on. Think now how AI has evolved to learn people's voices, to basically look at a long list of how different things are pronounced. Can even understand regional accents, which I don't really have one, but if you were in a law firm, I don't know, in deepest, darkest Glasgow, for example, you may find that an AI struggles a bit to understand what you're talking about. That's not necessarily the case now. So in practical use, definitely very much used in terms of banking and business utilities, used massively in terms of leisure. You would be hard-pressed to find some sort of technology product that is not employing some form of rudimentary AI at the moment. And I think it's the future. I think it's creating a situation where ultimately, if you think of it, AI is just a system which tries and use learning to make itself better and therefore provide a better user experience. Nobody's going to be interested in AI if it actually doesn't provide anything useful. So the practical uses are immense, absolutely immense. Think of it in terms of medicine, how it can monitor tracking diseases, how it could be used in terms of surgery. Think of it in terms of crime fighting. I mean, this is something from Minority Report, trying to use AI to try and predict where a next crime will take place, trying to work out a modus operandi of a crime, trying to work out what the possible likelihood is of who could be behind it. But this in turn, I mean, it creates a bit of an AI revolution, but in turn also there's a bit of fear in this as well. So AI is being used in various places already, lots and lots of places. It's being used for a long time. It may have been quite rudimentary at the beginning, but it is now very advanced. In the US, AI has been used increasingly in terms of sentencing criminals. So this creates a profile of the basically the convicted criminal. And when they're looking at how they should be sentenced, tries to look at the likelihood of them reoffending, the likelihood that they may try and abscond if they were going to go for bail, for example. This is obviously before they were convicted, and comes up with basically an indication for the judge to follow. But often it seems that the judges are actually following that. But the issue is, AI, like any software, like any technology, like anything that is written, is only as good as the person who has created it. We're not at this phase now where AI is widely writing programs itself and therefore programming itself. We're not at the Skynet era, or indeed the Colossus era, at least not yet. But you find that when someone writes a piece of software, particularly if it's trying to do something that's dealing with an individual, it will often carry the biases of the person who wrote it. So we're finding, for example, in the US, where AI is used for sentencing, that it carries the biases that, for example, it may prejudice someone who's from a poorer background. It may prejudice someone who is an ethnic minority. It will take prejudices of whoever was writing the AI and then perhaps lead to an unjust and unfair result. And that is a risk. Now, that's an extreme example, but the bias will also exist in, for example, loan. If I go back to the financial service industry, if you're using AI to decide whether someone is eligible for a loan, it will use some predetermined view of whether you are an individual that fits the criteria that's been programmed into it. It may learn from them. It may look at previous defaults and then try and work out whether you'd be essentially good for the money. But it's still carrying that bias with it, and you still may find that you don't have any right to appeal. Now, this right to appeal thing is a big deal. It certainly even crops up in the GDPR, actually, which is quite interesting. They are looking at ways to limit whether AIs can take any decision or do anything on their own. And I think this is a useful control, making sure that humanity doesn't essentially ignore what's happening and take the easy approach. Let's be honest, if someone's given a solution via a computer, they will almost always follow it because it's the easiest path, rather than think, well, is this actually right? I don't know if anyone remembers the TV show in the UK called Little Britain, where someone would type something into a computer, just respond, computer says no. Well, AI gives more capability for that, which is a problem. So what's the issue legally? There's lots of questions relating to AI. The first thing is, should it be regulated? I don't know if anyone's been watching the latest Star Trek series Picard, which is very much about synthetic life and artificial intelligence. And if you haven't watched it, I massively recommend it. Even perhaps if you're not a Star Trek fan, it's still very good. But should it be regulated? Now, how would you actually regulate it? You can regulate what it does. I think that's the only way you can actually regulate AI, is by saying we can only use it in certain circumstances, and there should always be a human element. There must be essentially a control, an infallible human control perhaps, rather than a cold-hearted AI, but there should still be something that stops AI just being allowed to make any decision it wants, and that applies automatically to a situation or an individual. And we'll see that. I think we'll see more regulation of that, but we'll also see that put into contracts. So where you are contracting for use of AI, it may sound like AI contracts would be something very, very exciting. Maybe something out of 2001: A Space Odyssey, or something spacey. But actually, a contract for deployment, engagement, outsourcing to AI technology is really no different to any other contract for commercial services. It's normally software as a service, or sometimes people get quite clever and call it AI as a service to make their contracts look more sexy than they really are. But it's still the same. Who's liable if something goes wrong? What if the AI starts giving wrong decisions? What if the system fails? You have the same considerations in terms of loss, what the repercussions might be, what might be excluded. So there's no big difference there. I'm afraid legally it's not as scary as you might think. Now, one question that comes up a lot, and it came up in the context of self-driving cars for sure, is who is liable if an AI fails? Well, more often than not, it will be whoever provided the AI. So if you're in a contract with someone, they're providing AI services, something goes wrong, it automatically changes pricing based on market conditions, and it starts selling everything at a very low price because it's been confused or something's gone wrong. You will be liable. The person providing the software will be liable. AI is not sentient. You can't make a claim purely against the AI, and you can't put the AI in prison. We're not in a William Gibson novel yet. So I'm afraid it isn't quite as scary or as exciting as you might think. It ends up being in some ways, quite dull. Now, what would be interesting, though, is what if AI is increasingly used by governments and you have claims against those? Well, again, it's going to very much depend on the existing framework. Can you make claims against a government? Is a government essentially acting outside of its powers by using AI to, say, sentence you, take your photo, monitor you going through a city? Again, it's going to depend where you are. So I'm afraid it's not that fun. And what I'd like people to remember is that AI isn't a revolution. It is just a development of something we've had for some time, where technology becomes more advanced, and actually we are using AI all the time. It is ultimately just another system for doing things. So the future, has it been here a long time? Are we already living in the middle of the AI revolution? Well, I would say we actually are. If you look at the amount of devices that do deploy AI, I used a Amazon Echo at the beginning of this podcast, but your TV will be deploying AI. If you're watching Netflix when you're stuck at home during the whole coronavirus crisis that's going on, Netflix is using AI to recommend you what you should be watching, recommend things that you might like. Now, the problem is, it's all being done with algorithms, and much the same as any AI, it's being done, and you're not necessarily... You may be able to play those algorithms, you may be to manipulate them. You can manipulate an AI much more easily than you can manipulate a human being in most situations. But it is still there. It is very much the future is here. How will we see for the future? Well, I think most technology developments, most technology contracts, whatever they are, even the most basic things in the future, will involve an AI element. but legally you won't see it. You'll just think it's another system and something else that you're paying for. We're a long way from robots taking over the world. We're certainly a long way from Colossus. We're even further away from Skynet at the moment. As far as I'm aware, there are no... Actually, no, that's not true. There are some AI-powered drones that can hunt down a target that exist, but I don't think they're in widespread use, and we shouldn't be scared of them just yet, and let's hope that they get regulated. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm a bit shorter than usual because it's just me speaking, and it's listening to me drone on is probably not as much fun as two voices. But if you have any questions, do let me know. Do get in touch. It's paul.haswell@pinsentmasons.com. And of course, if you have any suggestions for something to cover in the future, do let me know as well. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I will be back next week. Hopefully, I will be able to get someone else with me. But if I'm still stuck in quarantine, then it might just be me, possibly with top tips on how to deal with being stuck in quarantine using technology, although I don't really know what the legal aspect would be of that. Anyway, hope you're all staying safe, and I hope to speak to you all again very, very soon.